We will have one exception to that when we go to the range here in a little bit. Now it's time for the cool trick I told you guys about. The short answer for anybody who doesn't want to watch the rest of the video, got it, it's summertime, not a big deal. After I tell you this, please pull it over into a separate window and turn the sound off or something like that. That's totally within the terms of service of YouTube. Yeah, that totally works. But the short answer is that 1/3 co-witness is going to work for you the majority of the time. The major exception to this is, and I'm going to do my best to dance around this one for anybody who's sensitive, small people. So someone who has not achieved what we would say is the dimensions of a full-grown adult, perhaps a very little woman or an adolescent. The critical dimension that we're talking about here is the distance between the shoulder index point for the stock and the cheekbone. If you're a very little person, then the 1/3 co-witness may be too tall for you, and you may have to come off of the shoulder weld to be able to get on to the optic. And that's just a bad situation. You're not going to shoot as good because you don't have that point of contact on the rifle. It won't be consistent. You may have to go to co-witness. So for anybody who isn't tracking, this is 1/3 co-witness, and this is absolute co-witness. There are some other reasons that we're going to get into in this video why you may want to choose one or the other. But in my opinion, I have two rifles on the wall here. Both of them are short barrel rifles that are set up, and again, in my opinion, properly. Your mileage may vary, but I think that you'll see the logical approach that I'm using for this, and hopefully this is something that can give you guys a little bit different thought process on how to set up your rifle depending on which type of optic you're going to use. I'm using MROs, Trijicon MROs on these ones. They are set up in Midwest Industries co-witness and 1/3 co-witness mounts respectively. These are the throw lever ones, the single throw lever, so you just throw that lever and get it out of the way if you want to. To be honest, and I'm a Trijicon fanboy, Trijicon, your stock MRO mount is hot garbage. Sorry, fix it. It's terrible. But in the meantime, we have the Midwest Industries mount that does an excellent job at making sure that it's not super heavy, gives you QD capability, and is just a solid mount that doesn't lose zero. Is really what we're looking at. These rifles both have Midwest Industries combat rails on them. They're M-LOK handguards, 7-sided M-LOK on them. Just basically my favorite rail that's out there today. Definitely give that one a look. I believe that we have a full video out on that. One of these rifles, this one, is in 300 blackout. This one's in 5.56. That doesn't really matter for this video, but I also wanted to put a distinction out there. This one has a standard stock. This is a Mission First Tactical Minimalist stock, and this one has the Deadfoot Arms MCS on it. It's got a reduced carrier in there that allows this gun to fire folded. Big distinction there, just wanted to make it really quick. We have two different iron sight profiles on these guns, and first is the fixed Midwest sights. So these are fixed sights, they don't fold out of the way. And then we also have the combat sights here that are flip-up sights, and you'll notice that they are paired with different heights respectively, and that's on purpose. So fixed sights are great. The great thing about fixed sights is they never move. Unless you shatter them off the front of the gun, they're not going anywhere. I'm a big fan of the cross-pinned standard M4 tower on the front of guns because it joins the gas block with the front sight tower and it makes it so it can't move and it can't be wrong. I'm a big fan of that, but the fixed iron sight is great because it will never move unless you break it. So that's awesome in my opinion. It's very consistent. In my opinion, if you're using fixed iron sights, you should be using a 1/3 co-witness. There will be one exception to that rule later in the video when we go to the range. Because the big problem with fixed iron sights is they don't move. So if you have fixed iron sights with an absolute co-witness mount, your sight can get fairly occluded. It can get really busy in there when you've got sight picture, you've got target acquisition, and then you got a secondary set of sights in there. It just fills up the space a lot and makes it very busy. So in my opinion, you should use 1/3 co-witness, and what that's going to do is drop those iron sights to the lower 1/3 of the picture through the optic. And if you're using something like a throw lever mount, it doesn't really matter as much. You can get that sight out of the way if it stops working for whatever reason, but you can still use the sights. You just have to move your cheek farther down to be able to get from the red dot to the iron sights. And this works great because they're up and out of the way, because that 1/3 puts it up and out of the way. You can look right over the sights, very easy to use, drop down if you need to use them. The problem with the 1/3 co-witness is it is up and out of the way. And we already touched on the short statured person, which is a thing. But the second and third things are, first, because it's up and out of the way, it's going to be much taller. This distance and the distance that we're looking at here is going to change. So this is the distance that we're talking about. But overall, the distance that we're really concerned with is the distance between the center line of the bore and the center line of the optic. If you get a 1/3 co-witness down here compared to a absolute co-witness, that offset is going to be greater. And when we're talking about shooting inside the ballistic arc, i.e. inside of our zero range, if we're shooting at like 10 feet or something like that, you're pretty much going to be at that offset. So wherever the center line of this is and the center line of this is, that distance is pretty much where you're going to be shooting at. So if you're using it for like a home defense gun or something like that, you're going to have to keep that offset in mind. So I did a really quick field zero at 50 yards to make sure that these guns were hitting in the same spot. And really the underlying reason that needed to happen was because the MRO that is on the 300 Blackout gun was literally in a stock Trijicon mount like 12 hours ago. So I've moved the target into 10 feet. We're going to do that close range deviation test between the absolute co-witness and the 1/3 co-witness. Remember, the 300 Blackout is in the absolute co-witness. So 300 Blackout, absolute co-witness, we're looking at pretty much 2.2 inches. If we go down to the 5.56 that was in the 1/3 co-witness, we're looking at an extra ½ inch of deviation. And that's what we're talking about as far as that close range inside the ballistic arc deviation. Height over bore. The error is going to be much less in an absolute co-witness mount than that of the 1/3 co-witness. Just throwing it out there. Having done both, your margin of error is much greater on a 1/3 co-witness. You have to absolutely drill both. If you're going to use one or the other, you absolutely have to train with it. But you're less likely to miss if you use an absolute co-witness. The other problem with the 1/3 co-witness is, especially for my cops, you're in and out of the cruiser, you need to get your rifle. Because this distance is greater, you are much more likely to get it tangled up on things. You absolutely have to have some kind of keeper on the side of the gun for the sling, or don't run a sling at all. Because that's just because this is taller, you're more likely to get wrapped around the objective and it slip down into this space and get you hung up. Okay, that's the problems with 1/3 co-witness. Top of the rail, and this is not going to be a real measurement. And again, this is not a real measurement. 0.6. Absolute co-witness, not suggested for fixed iron sights. And the reason is there's just a lot of stuff that's going on in there. You basically take half of your optic and fill it up with sight. Is the problem that you run into. Your dot also will superimpose on your front sight post if you choose to zero them at the same point. And that can be good for feel goods, but for the most part, outside of confirming that the gun is still zeroed the way it should be, there's really no utility outside of feel good. Again, one exception to that at the end of the video. So if you're going to use an absolute co-witness mount, I highly suggest that you go ahead and get a set of fold down sights so that when you have that optic in that low position and you're not using them, you can go ahead and fold down your sights, trying not to make a whole lot of noise there. You can go ahead and fold them down out of the way and then retrieve them as you need them. Again, highly suggested is some kind of QD throw lever mount so you can be that quick. That optic's out of the way. You can go ahead and retrieve those iron sights if you so choose. If the optic died, I happen to go through batteries like crazy because I never turn these things off. That's one of the reasons I switched to the MRO, so I can more quickly change the battery instead of having to take the whole mount apart like an RMR. All right, it's time for the cool trick I told you guys about. We're going to pretend like we have an M4 front post there. So we're going to pretend like this flip down sight cannot flip down, but maybe we've got a backup rear. So the scenario is our backup iron sight in the rear is down. We have a fixed front sight here, we're going to pretend, and then our optic dies. Okay, so this optic, you can see I've turned all the way to 0, and now we're in a situation where we've got an absolute co-witness mount with a big bell and a fixed iron sight. Oop, malfunction. We're gonna blame 300 blackout. Okay, so what did we do there, guys? Remember, no rear sight. Rear sight was down the whole time. Optic was off. What I did was I used that housing, the big dark housing of the red dot in the absolute co-witness, as a giant ghost ring. Is it going to be as accurate as, say, this? Heck no, it's not. Bigger hole, less accurate. Smaller hole, more accurate. But in a pinch, if I'm running fixed iron sights, the one caveat to running fixed iron sights, at least a front iron sight, with an absolute co-witness mount, is that in a pinch, you can use that optic housing to get semi-accurate rounds on target. That's 50 yards. I think it's a 10-inch gong. Pretty consistent shooting. Allows me to get some shots on target, so then I can clear up some time to go ahead and get that throw lever thrown and that iron sight up if I need to. All right, to close her out, we're going to try that same technique, this time with the 1/3 co-witness, and I'm going to say straight off the bat, I don't expect this to work at all. So again, optic all the way off, and then I'm going to go ahead and flip this aperture kind of like halfway, halfsies, so that I can't use it. So we're going to try the same gong. This is 5.56 this time. So same gong, and just using the center. No dice. I'm going to try a little bit bigger target. See down there, there's a huge gong, and I'm guessing I'm shooting high. We're going to aim center and see if I've got enough to get on a target that big at 60, 70 yards. You're using just the housing and the front iron. Is that a hit? I can't tell if I'm hitting it or not. I'm aiming the bottom of the plate this time. There it is. So I had to aim. Let's see if I can duplicate it. Yeah. To hit, I had to aim probably 15 feet in front of the target to be able to hit with that kind of setup. So you can see there's a big difference in the capabilities between absolute co-witness and 1/3 co-witness, if that is something that you're going for, if that's a capability that you want. So I hope this video does a good job of outlining the capabilities of 1/3 co-witness versus absolute co-witness and how it plays nice with fixed iron sights versus retractable backup iron sights, and basically what we use them for here at VSO. Again, your mileage may vary, but I hope that it gives a good presentation of the different things that you can do with them and what should kind of be in your mind when you're trying to pick a sight picture for your rifle. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting or informative, please hit that subscribe button, maybe even give it a like, and if you really want to make it go wide, then hit that share button. Excuse me, the heat's getting to me, starting to get dehydrated. Thank you again for joining us here today on the VSO Gun Channel, and hopefully we'll see you guys on a future video.